Welcome to the White Spring Bunker. These halls were built to safeguard some of the most prestigious members of the United States government. We are Modus, and we are always looking for men and women capable of helping us restore what has been lost. In return, we offer this, a new enclave and our refuge from the world above. Please, take your time and look around. The Colonel has made great strides restoring this place to its former glory. Welcome, member, to our little enclave.
Greetings, members. As always, I am the Operative, your designated tour guide and host here at the White Spring. Trader Red continues her journey north towards the Mire, meeting some familiar faces along the way, before finding out that Appalachia plays by its own set of rules. But never underestimate a backwoods country girl. And something has gone horribly wrong at West Tek, as Lieutenant Jones and Sergeant Tyson find themselves facing the unexpected. Nothing is what it seems. There are plans within plans, and the fight for the future is just beginning.
Should have stayed in Tennessee. At least the Reavers will kill you before they eat you.
Red was running for her life, again. Despite trying to stay to the hillside, she dropped down from an outcrop directly into a den of feral ghouls. It had taken them a few seconds to realize she was there, which was just enough time for her to hightail it down the mountain. The ghouls screeched and moaned as they ran after her, some of them tripping and falling on the rocks, but most kept pace with her all the way down. Red slid down a final embankment onto an old road. The asphalt was broken and weathered, but allowed Red to pick up the pace and put some distance between her and her ghoul pursuers. The road twisted north, back into the hills, and there appeared to be some old building in front of her.
Ain't it port in a storm, right?
Red's leg muscles ached as she tried to squeeze just a bit more speed, extending her stride as she got closer to the structure. She had to dodge in and out of several wrecked cars, stopped in front of the gate. She could hear the ghouls gaining on her again, banging against the sides of the twisted steel frames and shrieking louder now. Clearing the gate, Red found herself in an old parking lot filled with cars. The building in front of her was nondescript, with the exception of a sign across the front that read, Sugar Grove. She beelined it for the front door, hoping to lose the ghouls somewhere inside. Red took the steps up to the building 3 at a time, tripping when she hit the last and sliding across the patio. She tried to ignore the various cuts, bruises, and maybe even a sprained ankle.
Stay down!
The front of the building seemed to explode with the sound of gunfire. Red covered her head as glass showered the area, but within seconds the firing stopped and relative silence returned. She could hear the sound of boots crunching on the broken glass walking towards her. Her parents had once explained the concept of from the frying pan into the fire, and as she took her hands from her head and opened her eyes, she hoped for the best, but feared for the worst. When she looked up, she saw a group of what appeared to be soldiers standing in the atrium of the building, all holding smoking weapons, while another walked towards her. It was a young-looking man, dressed in some kind of sleek green camo armor and a beret.
Ma'am, are you okay?
Feeling a sense of relief, Red took his hand and pulled herself up to her feet. She gingerly brushed herself off and felt her ankle. She didn't know if it was sprained, but it did hurt like hell.
I'm Captain Thomas. We saw you running from those ghouls. All taken care of now. Can I have a medic take a look at you?
Red looked behind and saw the remains of the half-dozen ghouls who'd been chasing her. They were riddled with bullets and most certainly dead.
Y'all are real lifesavers. Yeah, happy to have a look-see and make sure everything's where it ought to be. But please mind the jewelry. Oh, and I'm Red, by the way.
She held out her hand and the two shook. The captain took a look at the collar and appeared puzzled, so he'd probably never seen an explosive prisoner collar before. Red knew that she'd have to say something, but she wasn't quite sure what she would say, or how they might take it. Thomas helped her into the building and introduced her to Private Jessup. He had her sit in an old office chair while he examined her wounds. Lucky enough, it was all superficial cuts and mostly bruises. She had twisted her ankle, but he said that she'd be fine in a day or two.
Normally we don't allow civilians in here, but it wouldn't be right to throw you out after either.
That's mighty kind of you. And I promise I won't cause any trouble. But, who the hell are you folks?
Well, we're all from Vault 76, but now we're with the new Enclave.
New enclave? Like the government or something?
Figured you weren't from around here. It's a long story, but yeah, close enough. We're helping to rebuild Appalachia, and are about as close to a government of some sort as you get nowadays.
Huh. Well, back in Tennessee, we ain't seen anything that looked or smelled like Govies for a long time. Old Johnny Law used to come sniffing around for our stills back in the day, but the war took care of that. Now it's just settlers, survivors, and raiders.
Can't say it's too different. Just throw in a radioactive mutants, flying bat monsters, and a host of other creatures that want to kill us.
So I've noticed.
It's not so bad once you get used to it.
Thomas escorted Red further into the building. It certainly looked like it had once been some kind of official government office. There were still desks scattered about and old broken terminals with lots and lots of filing cabinets.
Don't mind the mess. We don't use these parts of the building very much, though we have tried to tidy things up. However, we also don't get a lot of guests either.
Figures. Well, I still won't say a thing. Like you said, this is all hush-hush, right?
That would be appreciated, Red. We used to get scavengers and such sniffing around, but show of force was enough to get them to leave us alone.
Red just nodded as they walked through the interior. They filed past a few more corridors before heading downstairs and ended up in a control room with big maps and computer screens up on the walls.
Well, if that don't beat all.
Red had never seen anything like it. Even if most of it wasn't working, it still looked very high-tech.
Takes a lot to keep things up and running. Not like we can run down to the corner store and get replacement parts.
So, what do you do here?
Keep an eye on things mostly. There used to be a lot more here before the war. There was a lot that we cataloged and took elsewhere.
Elsewhere?
Classified.
I'll get it. All hush-hush, right?
Something like that. Anyways, we have a little barracks set up on the other side of the control room. It isn't a hotel or anything, but you can grab a cot, set down your pack, and rest up. We've got decent chow, and you can even take a shower if you'd like.
Like a real shower? With running water and everything?
The water isn't super hot, but yeah.
Might need to check and see if I died and gone to heaven.
Davies, why don't you show our guests to the bunk room?
Davies, one of the other soldiers, introduced himself and escorted Red across the room to the little bunkhouse. It wasn't much, just a dozen or so military cots set up with rows of lockers, but it was a sight better than sleeping on the ground. Red thanked them and sat down her rifle and pack before stretching out on a cot. The experience and stress of the last few weeks fell away as she drifted off to sleep.
Pretty sure that thing on her neck is an explosive of some kind.
Red slowly woke back up and heard the tail end of a conversation across the room. She stretched, yawned, and leaned up on her arms. Davies was speaking to Thomas, but when they looked over and saw she was awake, the conversation ended. Thomas just smiled and walked over to the bunk.
Hey, sleep well?
Red nodded and sat up on the edge of the bed and stretched again.
You seem real nice, and I hate to ask.
The collar, right?
Thomas pulled up a small folding chair and sat down.
I mean, I have superiors, and if they start asking questions, it would be good to know what kind of trouble you're in.
Red pursed her lips. She was pretty reserved by nature, despite being able to swear like a sailor when the situation called for it. And she didn't know these guys from Adam, but they did save her life.
Okay. So here's the deal. I'm a courier on assignment for the Blue Ridge Caravan. They're, sending me north, like way north, to some place called the Mire, to pick up something and bring it back.
The Mire? That place is bad news. Wouldn't even spend much time up there. It's dark, like real dark. With these crazy vines all over. And just nasty creatures, too. You think those ghouls were bad? Nothing compared to what you'd find up there.
Except, I don't have a whole lot of choice in the matter.
But why the collar? I mean, that's crazy.
What? Didn't you know it was the latest fashion?
Seriously, Red, what did you do?
Red frowned. Her attempt at humor hadn't quite gotten the reaction she hoped for.
Not my choice, darling. This contract I took, well, it came with some conditions. And one of them was this. To make sure I bring back the package in one piece. Because if I don't, I certainly won't be in one piece, but several.
Shit.
Nothing I can do about it. So I just do my job and I get clear of this.
Damn. Well, I figure you're telling the truth and you aren't some raider spy, or worse. However, I know Command would get a bit nervous having you around the expensive equipment should you decide to, explode or something.
They both sat there and had quite the laugh fest for a few minutes before finally calming down.
I will need to report this. They might be curious, but I'll just tell them to bring it up with the Blue Ridge Caravan. We're stuck here for another week or so before we get relieved, but the least we can do, get you fixed up and fed. Plus, you can take a look at our provisions if you need anything.
I'd be much obliged. Hell, just getting a decent rest on something that wasn't a rock was a blessing.
Thomas tipped his own beret and took Red over to where the rest of the team was grabbing their dinner. It was already dark outside, and the automated defenses had been activated. Red joined their little circle and was handed a plate of food. It was pretty standard fare, but at least it was hot, and there was plenty of it. They all talked amongst themselves for the next hour or so. The whole group were former Vault 76ers who joined this new enclave after something they called Reclamation Day. Not a lot of it made sense to Red. Sure, she knew about the vaults, but had never run into anyone from one of them. And this whole new enclave thing? Were they government? Were they not? It wasn't really clear, and she didn't have the heart to ask. When they had finished, one of Thomas's teams, Private Pauline, took Red to a large bathroom, which had a shower. Like a real one. She said it worked, most of the time, but not to expect a lot of hot water. At that point, Red didn't care. She quickly stripped down and jumped in, leaving Private Pauline holding her clothes and quite red in the face. Literally. Despite the water only being tepid, it was a sight better than what she had been used to, but this was the first time in a very long time she felt mostly clean. When she got done, Red retrieved her clothes and a towel that the private had left for her. Getting dried off and changing, Red went back into the makeshift bunk room and chatted with the others for a while longer, before they all went to bed. It didn't take long for Red to fall back into a deep sleep, with dreams of better days in her head.
Wakey, wakey, sleepyhead.
Red slowly opened her eyes and saw Thomas standing over her. He was already dressed in his field uniform and armor, holding a cup of coffee in one hand.
What time is it?
0800, Red. We've been up for a few hours, but figured you needed your sleep.
Bless you, darling. I haven't slept like that in ages.
We saved you some breakfast, and Davies cleaned your rifle. He said it was nearly an antique.
That's old Percy. Handed down a few generations now in my family. Ended in my hands when Mom and Pa decided they weren't going to have any more kids but me. It shoots straight as an arrow and has damn near saved my life more times than I can count.
Well, I'm pretty sure we can spare some 45 ammo to take. We got plenty at the moment.
I'd be much obliged. By the way you all talk about the Mire, sounds like I'm gonna need it.
Thomas took a seat on the edge of Red's cot.
I sent an update to command last night. Just heard back. They asked a lot of questions that I didn't have answers to. You're probably the only one who can. But I don't think you should.
Why, darling?
Because they would probably order me to take you back with me. When we get relieved. They get curious. Really curious. And with that thing around your neck and all, I don't think you'd make it back in one piece.
Damn.
So, here's the deal. I already talked to the team and we agreed. You left here before first light. None of us saw you leave and we don't know where you are headed. Okay?
That's your story?
Best I got, Red. It'll be fine. Right now, they're just curious. What I don't want them to get is interested. The Colonel, she's great, but when she set her sights on something, well, she gets it.
That is really kind of you. And well, I don't know how, or if, I should thank you.
Do you have any idea what kind of paperwork I'd be forced to fill out if I got involved in whatever it is that you have going on? Worse, if I tried to take you back and something happened?
That sounds mighty terrible there, Thomas. Guess I better not inflict that kind of pain on you.
Your gear is ready to go. Eat, wash up, and you can head out the way you came in. Also, here.
What's this?
Your map was way out of date. This one is as accurate as we have. Things change in the Mire so quickly, but this should help. There are some safe spots up north. Not many, mind you, but a few. If you run into trouble, it could certainly help you to have a place to lay up.
I am much obliged.
Good luck, Red.
Thomas shook Red's hand and left her to get changed and eat. She didn't see the other soldiers around, so after she ate and took one last shower, she put on her pa's old hat and long coat, slung old Percy over her shoulder, and walked out of the front door of the building. As Red walked down the old road, she looked behind her once more, seeing someone waving from the top of Sugar Grove. She gave a quick wave back before seeing the complex disappear into the mists of morning. Ahead of her, the road continued north towards a wide canopy of trees, which she assumed was the Mire. Red checked her map one last time, then forged ahead, into the unknown.
Once upon a time, 27 years after the bombs fell, there were two people, a vault dweller and a California girl. They met, and sparks flew. That's when things got interesting. Once Upon a Wasteland is their story. Follow Elizabeth Kirby and Odessa Valdez as they pursue their happily ever after in the post-apocalyptic Appalachian wasteland of Fallout 76. Available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and many other podcasting platforms. Once Upon a Wasteland, a Fallout 76 love story. Available now.
What do you mean Johansson is missing, Sergeant?
I sent him down to go take a look at the super mutants. He was supposed to be back 2 days ago.
And you didn't bother to update the Colonel. Or me.
You don't understand, Lieutenant. Something weird is going on.
Sergeant, just what the hell are you talking about? And that still doesn't explain why you didn't tell us about Johansson.
I know you think I'm a bit crazy, LT, but I didn't want to report anything until I had some real proof to back up what I've seen. I swear I saw super mutants drawing a map of Appalachia.
That is crazy. We know they don't write or draw or whatever. Sure, they send out raiding parties and whatever, but that's a far cry from planning much of anything. They attack whatever they happen to run into and bring it back here. Been that way for as long as we've been monitoring them.
Something's changed between the earthquakes and them organizing. It feels bad, Lieutenant. I was in Alaska before the bombs. I've always had this sixth sense of when all hell is about to break loose. And I got that same feeling right now.
Jones took off his beret and rubbed his eyes. Tyson was a certified oddball, but he was a good soldier and knew his business. First things first, they had to find out what happened to Johansson.
Okay, I'll hear you out. And if you convince me, I'll go right to the Colonel. We're spread pretty thin, and if something does happen, we need to be prepared. However, we have a missing teammate, and finding him takes priority. You understand, Sergeant?
Yes, sir. I was able to track him as far as to the south of West Tek, but I think them hounds got my scent, so I had to head back.
Do you think the mutants got him?
I honestly don't know, LT, but first sign of trouble he would have skedaddled. I know it, but...
But what, Sergeant?
Like I said, these ain't normal mutants, I swear.
I should have brought my power armor.
What was that, LT?
Nothing, Sergeant. Let's get a move on while we still have daylight.
Jones left Corporal Samantha and the other two members of Team Gamma to keep watch and relay any information they got back to the bunker, while he and Tyson made the hike up to the memorial. Once there, they both looked down over to the rear of West Tek.
So this is where you saw that map?
Sergeant Tyson looked down at West Tek and nodded.
Well, I don't see anything now, other than the normal super mutant activity.
I'm not making this up, I swear.
I'm not saying you are. I just don't think it means what you think it means. Now, you said Johansson went over there and didn't report back at all?
Not exactly. We got one check-in from him when he was approaching West Tek from the south, but that was the last communication we received.
Damn. Sergeant, in the future, do not disobey the Colonel's standing orders. You got it?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's see if we can find Johansson.
Tyson and Jones worked their way carefully down the hill, following the track left by Johansson. They proceeded slowly, with Tyson leading and Jones watching their flanks and rear. The wind was in their favor, blowing in their faces, which meant that the mutant hounds wouldn't get their scent, at least not until they were much closer to the facility. The tracks got harder and harder to follow as they approached West Tek. In the distance, they could hear the howls of the hounds, but they did stay distant.
I don't like this.
What's going on?
Tyson pointed up ahead. The track continued into what appeared to be a small clearing.
I didn't get this far last time, but something's not right.
Come on, keep moving, Sergeant.
Tyson frowned, but slowly crept forward, sweeping from left to right with his combat rifle, with Jones following close behind. The track continued straight into the clearing, with West Tek itself just being a few hundred meters away. This was the closest that either of them had ever been to the facility, but rather than the normal sounds of super mutant activity, it was awfully quiet. Tyson stopped by a large tree and peeked his head around.
Oh, holy shit.
What is it, Sergeant?
Tyson just waved him forward, keeping his rifle pointed at something. When Jones got to the tree, he looked around for himself, and the blood drained from his face. There, in the middle of the clearing, was Johansson. At least most of him. The body was in a nearly indescribable condition, like someone had pulled him apart and put him back together again at random. His gear was stacked up on the ground underneath him, covered in blood and gore.
Jesus Christ! What the hell happened?
They got him. Damn. Fuck!
Jones looked to the right and left, then started walking out from behind the tree.
I'm not going to leave him there. Not like that.
Bad idea. He's dead. Mutants will probably come back to eat him.
Not on my watch.
Before Tyson could object, Jones walked into the clearing, intending to at least collect Johansson's personal effects.
Aha! I knew it! Trap worked! Found them! Get them!
A group of super mutants burst from the opposite side of the clearing. It had been a trap. But super mutants didn't set traps. Never had. Until now.
Shit. 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 LT, run.
Tyson raised his rifle and fired a long burst into the direction of the super mutants. He needed to distract them long enough for Jones to get back under cover.
Catch the little man!
From the left, another group of super mutants emerged from the woods, moving to outflank them. Then another group appeared to the right. These were basic military tactics, and it was horrifying. Jones was at a dead sprint, bullets whizzing past his head as the super mutants started closing in on all three sides. Tyson kept firing, but his bullets didn't seem to have any effect on the big green mutants. They continued to charge forward, firing from their hips. At least they were still wildly inaccurate, even if they were frighteningly coordinated.
Move, brothers! He bring minigun!
We have to get out of here.
Straight back, LT. I'll cover. And we go now.
The two new Enclave teammates snapfired at the super mutants who were running back the way they came. The mutants kept coming, smashing their way into the foliage, continuing to fire. Tyson and Jones ducked and dodged through trees and moved as quickly as they could, trying to lose their super mutant pursuers. After about 10 minutes, they found themselves on a small rocky outcrop, still too far from the listening post to seek cover. Tyson pulled out his binoculars and looked back down the trail.
Sergeant, see anything?
No. Wait. Shit, they brought the hounds. LT, they are hunting us. Really hunting us. This is real bad. Get the fuck out of here, get back to the others, and get on the horn. I'll distract them, lead them south as far as I can.
That's suicide, Sergeant!
I'll circle back. I ain't gonna be part of no mutant stew. Just go. The Colonel needs to know about this. You're a hell of a lot faster than my old ass.
Jones knew the sergeant was right.
Here, take my rifle and ammo. I don't need the weight anyway. And good luck, Sergeant.
Get the hell out of here, LT.
Jones handed over his rifle and ammo pouch, saluted, and took off up the hill, leaving Tyson behind. Jones looked back one more time before cresting the hill, watching Tyson sighting down towards their pursuers. A minute later, Jones could hear the rough staccato pop of automatic rifle fire and the wounded cries of mutant hounds. He ran even faster as the firing continued, until the sound was lost in the wind of the Savage Divide.
Hi, I'm Fire Rider, and I'm the host of The Pixel People, a podcast dedicated to taking a close look at our favorite characters from our favorite video games. From major characters who define the course of a game's storyline to smaller characters who you might have never noticed. Every week, we go beyond the quest line to examine a particular character's story arc and choices, and discover the real-world parallels and life lessons hidden just below the surface. I hope you'll join us. You can find the Pixel People on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere else you listen to podcasts.
Protect and serve. Protect and serve.
Before the war, automation was pursued to a nearly unlimited degree. Mining companies replaced their workers with Hornwright auto miners. Mail was delivered by handybots, and at the White Spring Resort, nearly the entire staff was replaced with bots of various shapes and sizes in an attempt to save money and keep the resort from bankruptcy. Despite widespread unrest, bots continued to dominate the local economy right up until the bombs dropped. As a testament to American engineering, many of these same bots survived the war, still performing their programmed tasks right up until this very day. This was especially true of the White Spring, whose full complement of resort bots kept the grounds mostly intact, right up until the time Modus was plugged into the resort mainframe, giving him complete access to the robotic staff. While the security bots were put under the direct control of the AI, the rest of the staff continued much as they had for nearly 30 years. The White Spring restaurant, considered one of the best in pre-war Appalachia, was still very much open for business. Of course, the bots did have to make do with an entirely different menu nowadays, but you'd be surprised what one can do with fresh mole rat. On this particular night, the Colonel was hosting a dinner in honor of their new desk, Commander Sophia Daguerre, of the former United States Space Agency, accompanied by Major Stein, her self-appointed escort and tour guide.
Protect and serve. Protect and serve.
I must say, Colonel, I never expected such unusual food to taste so good.
We owe a lot of credit to Major Stein, to be fair. He was able to upgrade the cooking staff with the latest information on the flora and fauna of the region. The Brahmin steaks and mute fruit pies are particular favorites amongst the members.
Why, thanks, Colonel, but I can't take all the credit. I mean, Lilith did have her own contribution.
I wouldn't consider what Lilith did to the sous chef to be an improvement, Stein.
Oh? What did she do?
Oh, let's just say that we were cleaning pieces of rad out of the ceiling tiles for a few days afterwards. I still feel bad for the cleaning staff.
That's why Lilith is prohibited from the kitchen, unless supervised.
Speaking of Lilith, I've heard so many stories since I arrived. Are any of them true?
Well, Sophia, take anything you hear about Lilith with a grain of salt. She's unusual, highly unusual, but she's also an asset to the new Enclave and my rambunctious little carnivore. Just, don't get in between her and dinner.
Really, Stein?
Just a bit of advice, Colonel. We don't want another incident happening.
Well, that was a lovely dinner. And you said we'd have pie for dessert?
The Colonel's favorite.
Stein, we are not having fancy lad snack cakes for dessert.
All right. The Colonel's second favorite.
And what would that be?
Mute fruit cobbler.
Yum. Cobbler is definitely not a pie, but that sounds delightful.
It is very good.
The Colonel's, friend, Eugenie, turned her on to it. She's not a bad cook herself. I approve.
She is rather good in the kitchen.
Sounds positively lovely. I'd be happy to meet this Eugenie one of these days.
I'm sure the Colonel here could arrange that. Right, Colonel?
Valeria's eyes narrowed as she stared at Stein, who merely smiled back and winked.
But if it's too much trouble...
Valeria's expression softened.
No, it's fine. I need to warn you, though. Eugenie is what we commonly refer to as a ghoul.
Andrew mentioned ghouls. Aren't they dangerous?
Only the feral ones. We don't understand the biological mechanism behind it, but certain people, when they absorb a lot of radiation, go through a variety of changes. To many normal folks, they look like monsters, but they are still human on the inside. Unfortunately, some of them keep changing and become violent, and lose their minds. Those are the ones we call feral.
Eugenie is a regular ghoul?
She is. Eugenie lived around here until the bombs dropped. Unfortunately, after she and the others changed, many of the survivors didn't differentiate between feral and non-feral ghouls. A lot of them were killed.
That's horrible.
To hear Eugenie tell it, she got out of Appalachia just ahead of the mob. Now she and a lot of others live up in the hills in their own compound, away from everyone else. I've done my best to reach out to my fellow 76ers and the newcomers to the region, and things have gotten better, but it's still far from perfect.
Well, I know I'm new around here and don't want to overstep, but I think that's downright noble of you, Colonel.
Yeah, I'm very proud of her.
Thank you both, but I like to think that anyone in my position would do the same. We need all the hands we can get to help rebuild, and judging someone by their appearance, well, it never made sense to me.
Then, I look forward to meeting Eugenie.
That got a small smile out of Valeria.
Sophia, Stein tells me you're a big fan of the Unstoppables.
The Mistress of Mysteries, actually. Not that I didn't like the others, mind you, but the Mistress, well, she was the best. Always wanted to be like her, even when I was a little kid.
We have a fair share of fans around the bunker, or so I've been told. Did Stein mention that Shannon Rivers used to live in Appalachia?
I believe Private Sullivan mentioned it when we were playing poker. Or maybe it was Douglas.
You play poker, Sophia?
Don't let her fool you, Colonel. We got ourselves here a card shark. She had both Sullivan and Bitter twisted up in knots.
About time someone took that pair down a peg or two. Good for you.
I was planning on taking Sophia down to the old Rivers estate. It's not too far from Charleston, and after we ran those blood eagles out of the area, it's fairly safe. I mean, wasteland safe at least.
Wow, I mean, that's incredible. I wonder what happened to her. Did she survive the war? Was she here in Appalachia? So many questions I want answered.
Stein has quite a bit of paperwork to catch up on. However, once he's finished the reports and made the rounds here, I think I might be able to spare him for a week or so.
And here I was thinking my days of homework were long behind me.
Maybe the motivation will do you some good, Stein. We've missed your steady hand around here.
You know, if it helps, Colonel, I'd be happy to lend a hand. It's not like I have a home to go back to, and maybe I can put my skills to good use around here. Andrew had me take a look at that vertibird wreck already.
I'm certainly not going to turn away an experienced volunteer.
And then it's settled. Time for some pie.
That got a genuine smile out of Valeria.
Protect
The waiter
and
protectron
serve.
walked over carrying two
Protect
fruit cobblers
and
for the
serve.
table, setting them down before returning to the kitchen. Valeria slipped from her old possum bottle while Stein cut and served the cobbler around the table.
Now this is delicious.
It most certainly is.
I'll send the compliments to the chef.
The three of them polished off nearly both cobblers, continuing their small talk. Valeria couldn't help notice the way that Stein looked at Sophia, and how she looked back at him in return. It was part of her that wondered if that's what she looked like when she was around Eugenie. Her thoughts were interrupted by the clattering of a fork on one of the plates.
Sophia, are you okay?
The former astronaut had stopped in mid-sentence and was holding her hand to her head.
Sophia! Sophia, what's wrong?
I don't... my head... It hurts.
Both Valeria and Stein pushed themselves out of their chairs and rushed to Sophia's side.
Hurts so much.
Stein saw Sophia's eyes roll back and she slipped out of her chair. He caught her before she could hit the floor.
Sophia? Sophia! Come on, stay with me. Sophia!
Someone call Dr. Harefield. Get the medical team up here, stat.
Modus! Modus!
Sophia felt herself falling into a dark void, the commotion around her echoing in the background, further and further away. It was like she was floating in space again. drifting against the vast field of stars. She heard whispers, a familiar voice, then nothing.
And there. Data stream confirmed. Recording.
Modus? Modus!
Terminate the signal, Dr. Emerson.
1 second. Power off. Data stream disconnected.
Shadow, please escort the good doctor back to his quarters. We will deal with the subject.
Yes, Modus.
What happened to Sophia? Is she okay?
I'm sure she will be fine, Doctor. The important thing is that the experiment worked.
But won't people get suspicious?
That's the point, Doctor. Our little astronaut is going to be anxious to find out what is going on. She'll lead us to exactly what we need.
I don't want to hurt her.
Keep cooperating, Doctor, and it won't have to get any worse for her. A few headaches are a small price to pay for progress, don't you think?
Do I have a choice?
Shadow just laughed and escorted Dr. Emerson deeper into the bowels of the White Spring bunker, walking past several repurposed server rooms, each one containing a medical gurney and chair hooked up to various terminals. When Dr. Emerson looked in as he walked by, he noticed that not all of them were empty either.
Hi everyone, I'm Chris.
And I'm not!
We're not doing that routine right now, we're trying to do an advertisement.
Oh, fine. I'm Sir Aloysius Pernicious, the better half of the team at One Wall Comedy.
Okay, I wouldn't go that far. Anyway, come check us out on YouTube. We're your #1 source for independent sketch comedy on the internet.
Yeah, 'cause that's such a big market.
Alright, come on, let's get out of here.
I'm getting paid for this, right?
Don't push your luck.
Damn. Dagger's pulling out all the stops for this one, isn't she?
The car's dead. It's every Blood Eagle for themselves, and Dagger's making a play for the top spot.
Jesus, that's a fucking tall order, ain't it?
It's those fancy rocket launchers she picked up. Figured she could scare the shit out of other bosses by blowing up something big. Get them to toe the line. First she wants to put on a show for the crew. Make sure no one else tries to fuck with her.
Party time.
You still got that pretty little thing on ice, right?
Yeah. Except she's been a real pain in the ass. Nearly bit Tyler's finger off getting the chains on her.
Mighty nice of her to stumble into our little ambush.
She still killed 2 guys, Benji.
All the better. Dagger wants a show, not an execution.
Strange, though. She's already got one of those collars on her. You better than to mess with it.
Doesn't matter. She's dead no matter what anyway. Just gotta make sure she puts on a good show. No way in hell am I getting on Dagger's bad side.
Amen to that.
The 2 Blood Eagles walked back towards their impromptu camp on the old Dolly Sods campground. Dagger had gotten on the Claw's bad side after the Blood got killed, so he left her to rot in the mire while he went back to Watoga, just to get himself killed. After that, Dagger had gathered up many of the loose eagles she could find in an attempt to rebuild the gang. Getting to be the boss was a hell of a lot harder than staying the boss, and in those first few weeks, Dagger had killed several Blood Eagles who challenged her leadership. It helped that Dagger was a former pit fighter who fought dirty. Most of the challengers didn't last more than a few minutes before she'd taken them down. Dagger had torn one man limb from limb, literally yanking his arm from its socket and beating him to death with it. That had calmed the gang down for a while, and a few successful raids helped her get the crew in the right mood. The week before, they'd hit a raider caravan heading south and found a bunch of crates full of 4-barreled rocket launchers. They looked like serious military weaponry, and it gave Dagger the idea to put them to good use in getting to the top of the Blood Eagle food chain. First things first, though, she wanted to put on a display for her crew, remind them again of why she was the boss, and that's where their newest prisoner came into play. Benji walked over to their makeshift slave cells while Cyrus headed back to his tent. Their prize was sitting against the back bars in their last cell.
What's up, Benji?
Dagger wants to send a message with the redhead.
With her? Shit. She may be a little spitfire, but Dagger will skin her alive in no time flat.
Her Dagger's got something special planned. And hell, if this little one fights half as good as when it caught her, it'll at least be fun to watch, right?
I was hoping she'd give her to us. Be nice to get a piece of that before we throw the rest of her to the muties.
Plenty of time for that. Dagger wants to hit the foundation with those newfangled rockets, and you can take your pick of any survivors.
Benji walked up to the bars and got a good look at their guest. She was wide awake and looked at the Blood Eagle with pure rage in their eyes. They'd stripped her of her hat, coat, weapons, and pack, leaving her dressed in a set of ratty scabbard clothes. Her hands were tied together with a length of chain, necessary after she'd broken Colin's jaw as they tried to capture her. Her red hair was matted and dirty, having been dragged through the mud back to camp. The other end of the chain was attached to a stake in the ground, limiting her movement to just a few feet around the cell. The glow from the explosive collar illuminated her muddy face. She barely said a word since they caught her. Not that they cared, though. She was just another piece of meat, and soon she'd be dead anyway.
Today's your lucky day, bitch. The boss has made you the main attraction.
The woman just gave him the finger. Then she laughed and blew her a kiss.
Don't mess with her until it's time. Got it?
Sure.
Benji walked back to the main camp. It wasn't nearly what they had back in Berkeley Springs, just a circle of tents around an old campground. Dagger had taken the old pavilion for herself and even found an old easy chair from the camp office down the trail, which she used as her own little throne. Dagger was busy messing with the weapons crates, pulling out one of the rocket launchers and hoisting it up to her shoulder.
Boom, baby.
Looking good, boss.
Course it looks good. Gonna look even better when I blow the shit out of foundation.
Where the hell do you think these things came from? They look almost brand new.
Don't know, don't care. But with these, and after we take care of foundation, not even those stuffed shirts at the White Spring are gonna fuck with us.
Benji just nodded. It didn't pay to contradict the boss, and he wanted to keep his head on his shoulders for as long as possible. Thank you very much.
You got the entertainment lined up like I asked?
Sure thing, boss. She's full of piss and vinegar.
Good. Been a while since I had a good fight. Need to get my hands dirty. Real dirty.
Decided on what weapons you want to use, boss? Machetes?
Nah, fuck that. Got a better idea. Grab a couple of meat hooks. It'll be nice and bloody. The crew will love it.
Gotcha.
Make sure everything's ready, Benji. This is gonna be our big coming out party. Not even the Claw could raise as much hell as we're about to. The rest of those fuckers will get in line to kiss our asses. So don't fuck this up. Got it?
Abso-fucking-lutely, boss.
Dagger turned to mess with the launcher again, sighting it out to the horizon and imagining what Spruce Knob would look like on fire. Then maybe she'd pay a visit to the White Spring and raise hell on that fucking resort from the hills. A few hours later, Benji and his small crew had cleared out a ring in the middle of the campground. It was big enough to give the boss room to move around, but small enough so everyone could see all the blood and gore they wanted. There was a large bonfire going with food, booze, and chems aplenty, and the gang was starting to get antsy.
Hey, when's the show?
Let's see some blood. Boring.
Dagger, ripping pieces off of the Deathclaw steak and sitting on her makeshift throne, punched Benji in the side, nearly causing him to spill his whiskey.
Sorry, boss. Okay, fuckheads. Who's ready to see some fresh meat?
The assembled raiders, high and drunk as hell, stood and cheered as one. After letting them go on for a couple of minutes, Benji raised his hand to quiet them down.
We got a real treat for you tonight. Gonna take that little morsel we picked up this morning and have some fun.
The crowd got all excited again as the three raiders came into a circle, pulling the red-headed young woman by her chains. She was fighting like hell, yanking against the chains, but they finally threw her into the middle of the circle, greeted by the yells and catcalls from the raider gang.
All right, folks, meet tonight's entertainment.
There were more hoots and hollers from the audience. The woman picked herself up off the ground and stood up straight, staring directly at Dagger with burning hate in her eyes.
She's got spirit. She's got fight. But does she have what it takes to survive? Doubtful. Before we get the show started, I wanted to show you exactly what we're celebrating tonight.
Benji took his cue and grabbed one of the loaded rocket launchers and handed it to Dagger.
See this here? This is my boomstick, baby.
Dagger pointed the launcher at the far tree line and pulled the trigger. In quick succession, 4 rockets spiraled out and exploded, lighting up the sky and throwing debris for hundreds of feet. The gang rose to their feet and cheered.
No one is gonna fuck with us. We're gonna take it all, starting with those Foundation fucks.
The cheers rose even higher, and Dagger relished it all. It was time to make Appalachia howl, but first, she needed to send another message.
And now, you're gonna watch me skin this little morsel alive.
The red-headed woman didn't move, didn't flinch, just kept her eyes right on Dagger.
But hey, gotta give her a reason to put on a good show, right? So here's the deal. If you win, girl, we'll let you go. Fuck, I'll even give you all your shit back, too. But you lose, well, you figure it out, sweet cheeks.
Dagger handed the smoking launcher to Benji and took off her coat, leaving her wearing stitched-together pants and a raider harness. She was well-built and muscular, and not to be trifled with.
And, as a special treat, got ourselves some new toys to play with.
Benji gave Dagger 2 steel meat hooks. She had used them plenty of times before, especially back in Ohio before her Blood Eagle days when she was a pit fighter. The meat hooks were light, quick, sharp as hell. It only took a couple of good swipes to disembowel an opponent. Better yet, they were exceptionally bloody and made a wonderful mess. As the crowd started placing their own bets, mostly on how long the girl was going to last, Dagger walked out to the middle of the circle, face to face with her opponent. The girl wasn't half bad looking, but Dagger needed to make it look good for the gang. She leaned over and whispered to her opponent.
Dumb luck we stumbled on you, and bad luck for you. Be best for you to make it look good. I can make it quick, or I can make it long. Depends on you. Either way, you're dead, so decide how you want to go.
The woman looked down at the chains around her wrist and spoke for the first time, in a southern mountain drawl.
Hard to put up a good fight with these here chains, ain't it?
Well, I'll be dipped in shit. It talks. Hey, Benji, throw me the keys.
Benji tossed Dagger the keys to the lock, and she unwrapped the chains, dropping them to the ground. The woman rubbed her wrists and looked over to the crowd before settling back on Dagger.
Ever used a hook before, cutie pie?
Never had much use for one.
That's too bad. They are a bit of a favorite of mine. Nothing better than gutting someone and watching them try to stuff their guts back in.
Dagger dropped the meat hook on the ground and walked back to the edge of the circle.
Finish up your bets, boys, and don't forget to pay up after.
The redhead reached down and picked up the meat hook, balancing it in her hand. Dagger did the same and dropped into her fighting stance. She expected the woman would try to run or drop back. All she had to do was get close enough and hook her a few times. She wanted her to bleed, but not too much. Of course, if the woman pissed her off, it was going to take a long time for her to die. Dagger smiled and lunged forward, swinging the hook up in a wide arc. As she went forward, the woman dropped into her own fighting stance and managed to parry the strike. The sound of metal on metal rang through the camp. Immediately, the crowd was on their feet, cheering. It looked like they were going to get a fight after all. Dagger was a little surprised, but figured the woman just got lucky. She continued to press forward, using her speed and weight to push the woman around the ring. The redhead was quick too, ducking and dodging, using the hook to block Dagger's. It wasn't too long before Dagger cut her across the arm, cutting through the ratty shirt and drawing blood. Dagger could tell that it hurt and the crowd went wild. A few raiders just made some quick caps based on who would draw first blood. It caused Dagger to drop her guard, just ever so much, and the woman responded with a swipe of her own across Dagger's thigh. Dagger took a few steps back and squeezed the wound. It stung, but not too bad. The woman had a little smirk on her face, which was enough to get Dagger pissed, and she charged forward. She faked left, then swung right and barreled directly into her, knocking the woman off her feet. Dagger brought the hook down, but the woman rolled out of the way just in time as the blade bit into the ground right where her head had been. The redhead sprang to her feet and managed a quick slice, cutting into Dagger's side before she returned the favor.
Not bad. Not bad. Not bad at all. Looks like I'll need to step up my game. You ready, bitch?
Dagger changed up tactics and switched the hook to her left hand, and the two fighters circled each other. The crowd was going wild, and bets in ever-increasing amounts of chems and caps were changing hands. Benji was getting a little worried. This wasn't supposed to last this long, but the girl was putting up one hell of a fight. Both of them were bleeding pretty good, and neither was backing down. Over the sound of the cheering, Benji thought he heard something. It sounded like birds or something, but he quickly put it out of his mind as he turned back to the fight. Dagger was getting in some good shots, but she was taking them too. Whoever this woman was, she was no stranger to pit fighting. She was starting to feel the effects of blood loss, so Dagger knew it was time to end it. This woman might be quick, but if she could just corner her, it would only take a few swings to tear out a vital organ or catch her across the neck. Dagger dug in her back foot and lunged forward, forcing the woman to back off to avoid getting caught in the hook. But it also put her back against the wall of gang members, one of whom, with a ton of caps riding on the fight, punched her in the back of the head, knocking her forward. Dagger saw her opening as the woman stumbled forward and she made her move, switching the hook back to her right hand. As she started the killing swing, the woman suddenly righted herself and switched her own hook to her left hand. Her right hand lashed out and grabbed Dagger's forearm, stopping it dead, while she made an underhand swipe with the meat hook, catching Dagger in the pit of her stomach and pulling upwards, hard. The pain tore through Dagger and she dropped her hook, falling to her knees. The woman yanked the hook out of Dagger's stomach with blood and guts pouring from the gaping wound. Dagger barely had time to react when the redhead slashed the hook across her neck, spraying arterial blood on the astonished crowd. Dagger brought her hand up to her neck in a vain attempt to staunch the blood as the woman, covered in blood herself, leaned down and whispered,
I said I never had much use for a meat hook. Not that I didn't know how to use one.
The words barely registered before Dagger's eyes rolled back and her body hit the dirt. The crowd was no longer cheering. You could hear a pin drop. Benji couldn't believe it. His boss, the boss, was dead. What the hell was he going to do now? Well, he thought, no chance he was letting that bitch go now. The rest of the gang would kill him, then kill her anyway.
Okay, someone smoke this bitch!
The woman stood up and sighed, dropping the bloodied hook into the dirt. As she heard the cocking of various weapons and waited for the end, a loud bird call echoed across the camp. A second later, the sound of automatic fire drowned out everything, as fire from the trees tore through the raider ranks, dropping blood eagle after blood eagle. The redhead dropped to the ground as bullets ripped overhead. Whoever was doing the shooting was methodical, with quick, controlled bursts.
Shit, shit, shit!
Benji ducked and dodged as he watched the gang get annihilated. The few survivors were firing in every direction, but they couldn't tell who was shooting them or where they were. Benji made a beeline for the trees, hoping to get far enough away to hide until it was all over. He didn't get very far. As he passed the first tree, a figure popped out and rammed a combat knife into his chest. As his strength ebbed away, he grabbed the figure, and they were both pulled out of the gloom into the light. Benji found himself looking in the face of a black-haired woman in combat armor. She looked down with a disgusted look and spit in his face, then twisted the knife. Benji's body slid to the ground while the firing slowly died off as the rest of the raiders were dispatched with surgical precision. The redhead, huddled on the ground, heard the firing stop and the sound of footsteps approaching. She looked up to see a trio of women approaching, with others behind. They were all heavily armed. One, who she presumed to be the leader, walked up and held out her hand. The red-haired woman breathed a sigh of relief and took it, getting pulled back to her feet.
Oh, you don't look so good. Look at you fixed out. Our camp isn't too far from here.
Who are you? And how did you find me?
Oh, you could hear these movements from a mile away of all the explosions and partying. Whether it be the sparrows, mercenaries, but with the good guys, well, girls. Here, I'm Lady Blackheart. I'll introduce you to the rest of the crew and get you patched up. What do we call you, honey?
Y'all can call me Red. Much obliged.
Well, Red, nice to meet you. Let's get you fixed up.
The maiden sparrows did a quick sweep of the camp, confiscating the wicked-looking rocket launchers, ammunition, and supplies, plus recovered Red's gear. Then all disappeared back into the trees from whence they came, leaving the camp behind. Once they were out of sight, a lone figure, dressed in shadowed black armor, dropped silently from one of the trees. He shouldered his own sniper rifle and approached the now destroyed camp. As he stood over the dead raider boss, he keyed up his comlink.
This is Gray Actual to Command. Over.
This is Command. Go ahead.
Courier 1 is still active. Will maintain surveillance. Over.
Excellent. Report back if anything changes. Command out.
The comlink blinked off. The man took one last look around before silently following the others, disappearing into the trees. Thank you again, members, for joining us here on The Modus Files. If you've enjoyed this content, please subscribe, and better yet, please leave a review to help others find our little enclave. You can also follow us on Twitter, @Modus Files, for more information about our podcast, Fallout 76 content, and random musings on the Enclave. I'd also like to thank our cast: Pandora Beatrix as Colonel Valeria Faustina, XO1 King as Major Andrew Stein, Chrissy Williams as Trader Red, Aaron Foster as Captain Henry Thomas, Austin Rogers as Lieutenant Jones, Jessica Starr as Commander Sophia Daguerre, Monty Wildhorn as Sergeant Tyson, Chris Smith from One Wall Comedy as Private Davies, the Super Mutants, the Board Raiders, Benji, and Dr. William Emerson, Kirsty Harrison as Dagger, Steve Lomberg as Cyrus, Don McCormick as the Raider Guard, Alexa E. as Lady Blackheart, Daniel Hawthorne as Lieutenant Shadow, Josh Smith as Gray Actual, Eric Gold as Gray Command, and Brad Williams as the voice of Modus. And a shout out to the Fallout Chad podcast, Once Upon a Wasteland, A-Bomb Radio, the El Gato Fight Club, 13, a Fallout podcast, the Fallout 5.0 role-playing community, the Wasteland Theater Company, and the rest of the Fallout community which has made this podcast possible. A massive thank you to Jeremiah Johnson, our favorite character artist, who provided the wonderful character artwork you can find on our website. Stay tuned for our next exciting episode, The Rarest Cryptid. Lastly, thank you to all of our subscribers and supporters. God bless the Enclave, and God bless America.
Members, we look forward to your next visit to our little enclave.